Hi, and welcome to our fourth webinar in our series by Dr. Karla Wade to talk about leveraging compliance, graduation plans, transition plans with indicator 13 and 14. Dr. Karla Wade has been an educator of students with exceptionality since 1982. She is currently director of the Spring Summer Break Intensives for the Academy for Inclusive Learning and Social Growth at Kennesaw State University and executive director of the American International Leadership Institute. Dr. Wade recently retired from a 30-year career in public education, most recently as transition coordinator for a larger Metro Atlanta school system, where she had also worked as a classroom teacher and vocational coach. This webinar is brought to you by the Georgia Inclusive Post-Secondary Education Consortium, and my name is Susanna Miller, and I am the statewide coordinator for the consortium, and we are pleased to have Dr. Wade here with us today. So you know, the Georgia Inclusive Post-Secondary Education Consortium is a project of the Center for Leadership and Disability at Georgia State University. The steering committee is composed of individuals from all over Georgia, including representatives from colleges and universities, the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities, the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency, the Georgia Advocacy Office, the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, as well as other organizations. And we seek to create opportunities for students who have historically not had access to college opportunities. And we are working throughout the state to create more and more opportunities every day. We are very excited to have Dr. Wade with us. And just another note on how you can help build post-secondary education in Georgia. You can learn about inclusive post-secondary ed through our consortium website, which I will show later, and the Think College website, which Dr. Wade will talk about. You can join our mailing list, and you can email me. My email is right here, smiller65@gsu.edu. And you can share more information with parents, students, and educators. The more word we get out, the more interest there is, and the more we can leverage numbers with lawmakers and other agencies to help create funding for these opportunities. And if you have contacts with anyone within a college or university, this is very much a grassroots effort and is started usually locally by a administrator or a faculty or staff member who really wants to take this on and make this happen at their university. And you can have them contact me as well. All right, Dr. Wade.
Thank you, Susanna Miller, and thank you for all of your good work. You have achieved much. We have lots of programs that are opening up. We'll be talking about those in a little bit, but it's all because of your hard work. And I am grateful to you, and the whole state of Georgia is grateful to you. Today, we're going to talk about inclusive post-secondary options on the national level and also local. We're going to talk about compliance, that key word that's so important for educators. We're going to talk about compliance within individual graduation plans, within transition plans, within indicators 13 and 14, and we're going to tie those all together. We're going to talk about high school activities that can lead to independence on a college campus. We're going to talk about leveraging technology and helpful apps to use to increase independence among students with disabilities who are interested in going to college. The abundance of inclusive post-secondary programs in our country is just amazing, just astounding. It's growing every year. Here is a map from several years ago showing the growth of inclusive post-secondary programs, and now there are over 200 this year that have opened up possibilities for students with intellectual disabilities that won't be going through the typical door in college, that are wanting a college experience and are able to access them in different ways. In Georgia, we have several possibilities currently. Kennesaw State University features the Academy for Inclusive Learning and Social Growth. It was established in 2009. It is a 2-year certificate program, and students there audit classes with their typical peers. They participate in job shadowing and job development activities, and those are supported by student mentors who work with the program. They are also able to access the dormitories. Students live in student housing. The support for students in the dormitories is not as deep, but the residence assistants are specially trained to work with students that are in the dorms there. Susanna, will you talk a little bit about the other programs that are under development in Georgia right now?
Yes, and we have some great news about a few more. So what's here on this slide, we have helped the University of Georgia Fanning Institute, Columbus State University, Georgia Tech, and East Georgia State College all start along the implementation process. So in the next 15 months, we should have all of these programs up and running in some form or fashion, and we're really excited about that. We just gave out some feasibility grants and some exploration grants for a couple of other universities who are jumping on and starting their trek down this road, and that would be Georgia Southern University, Georgia State University, Albany Technical College, and the University of West Georgia. So we're really excited to have some of the key universities here in Georgia working on this and moving forward and creating these options, which will only lead to other colleges and universities moving in this direction. So we're real excited.
Wow, Susanna, y'all have been working very hard and you have achieved so much. We are grateful. If you're wondering, is there one place that I can go to look and find information about all these programs? Good news, yes there is. This website is thinkcollege.net, and I highly encourage families, students, educators, anyone who is interested in inclusive post-secondary education to visit this website. It is rich in resources, from research to activities to information about individual programs. It's all right here. Go to this website, thinkcollege.net, to learn about college options for people with intellectual disabilities. One of the great resources in this website is the Think College Program Database. In this database, you can search by state, you can search by number of years the program offers, you can search by programs that offer a residential option or those that don't. You can search by programs that offer an option for students who are still in high school. These are great resources. Don't miss going to this website, thinkcollege.net, to check out all of these resources and all these possibilities. So, how do we do this? How do we prepare students with intellectual disabilities that are interested in going to college, and how do we leverage that compliance? That's always the question that teachers that I work with will ask, and educators who are in administration will ask, how do we leverage that compliance? How do we give ourselves credit for the good work that we're doing? Now, students have, in addition to the traditional IEP and transition plans, individual graduation plans that we're going to have to pay some attention to, and the Indicator 13 outcomes that we have to look to compliance. So the new reality for that these programs are and these possibilities for post-secondary education. Back in the day, when young men and young women would be asked at their IEPs what they want to do after high school, and the answer was, well, I want to go to college like my brother, like my sister, like my parents did. The answer was, I'm so sorry, there's nothing out there for you. And then, as an aside, I would often get a question from educators. Why should they even plan to go to college? Why should we give them false hopes? After all, there's no jobs out there for college-educated people with intellectual disabilities. Well, I propose that that's the wrong question. After all, Amelia Earhart learned to fly a plane even though there were no jobs for women pilots. Jackie Robinson learned to hit a baseball even though there were no jobs for African American men in the major leagues. So that's the wrong question. What's the right question? What's your passion? What's your major? What is it that you want to study and learn and do? That's the right question. The jobs will come. In Georgia, we are under the Bridge Act. The Bridge Act says that everyone will have a graduation plan, an individual graduation plan. In addition, students with IEPs will have a transition plan. We must look to align the graduation plan with the transition plan. That only makes sense. It does not make sense to have a student with a graduation plan that does not align with the transition plan, especially for students with disabilities planning to go to college. It is especially important that we make sure that we have all of our resources going in the same direction. So here's the language around individual graduation plans. Each local education agency shall ensure that each student develops an individual graduation plan before the end of the second semester in 8th grade, and each local education agency shall provide guidance, advisement, and counseling to each high school student that will enable the student to successfully complete his or her IGP and prepare for a seamless transition to post-secondary study, further training, or employment. It is our responsibility to provide that guidance and that advisement, so we really have to know what the possibilities are. The career clusters, the career pathways are available to students who are looking to develop an individual graduation plan. They should be based on age-appropriate vocational assessments and can include a post-secondary option for learners with intellectual disabilities. That should absolutely be driven by an employment outcome. The career clusters, the career pathways, are a perfect conduit to answering the question, should I go to college? And what should I study there? What should I look to learn there? In the transition plan, IEP coordinators are incorporating that career pathway and also addressing inclusive post-secondary preparation. Those both together will lead to appropriate goals to prepare for college and career independence. Here's the language surrounding the transition planning. Students beginning not later than the first IEP to be in effect when the child turns 16 or younger, if the IEP team determines that appropriate, and will include appropriate measurable post-secondary goals. The transition services, including course of study, that are needed to assist the child to reach those goals. That must be in the transition plan. So you're going to have measurable post-secondary goals in education and training, employment, and if appropriate, independent living. This is to be language around what's going to happen.
So who should be responsible for these
goals? As you're working towards an effective transition plan, the student is going to have to take on more of the responsibility for these goals, followed closely by the parent, and in diminishing levels of responsibility, the teacher. In addition to the annual measurable post-secondary goals, each transition plan will address annual goals in the following domains: education, preparation for employment, community involvement, adult living and post-school options, and optionally related services and daily living skills. The goals in these areas address what the student will do this year to come closer to the desired post-secondary goal. So leveraging the transition plan within the IEP allows us to first look at that current functioning, then address transition plan with the goals and activities, and lastly, write the IEP goals. So the IEP goals, by the time there's a transition plan in place, will be driven by the goals and the activities in the transition plan. Here are some recommendations for appropriate goals and activities in each of those domains that address the desires of a student who is looking to go to an inclusive post-secondary program. Under education, I've put a goal that has to do with technology. Technology is a very important piece of access in inclusive post-secondary programs. Students in college submit assignments via email attachment. Nobody writes a paper and hands it in. They email them in via attachment. This would be a great goal to work on, working on typing up assignments and submitting them via email. Many of our students struggle with handwriting anyway. Typing, using a keyboard, developing those skills in writing and saving a document to a desktop and then attaching it to an email to submit by a deadline. Those are skills that are going to be so important in college. Also, remembering when to turn in assignments and scheduling how to plan your weeks leading up to the assignments. Those smartphone calendars are so important, including an activity to work with a smartphone calendar to help remind and prompt when it's time to turn in an assignment could be a great goal. The Academy for Inclusive Learning likes to see a third grade reading level. If you have a student who is looking to attend an inclusive post-secondary program whose reading level is not quite up to third grade yet, that would be a good goal to have. Working on increasing the reading level to third grade would be a good idea. Susanna, will you talk a little bit about some of the apps that would be good for students with intellectual disabilities that want to go to college?
Yes, definitely. I'm a big fan of apps and assistive technology, and nowadays it is so much easier to get access to free or low-cost assistive technology through the use of apps. So some of my favorite apps, Evernote is my absolute favorite because I can use it on my phone, on my iPad, on my computer. It's just really exciting to be able to have access to my notes, my to-do list, things like that, wherever I am. So I use that a lot for to-do lists. I actually had a friend who wrote a book using Evernote because she always had it with her, and so she didn't have to hold things together. I love Dropbox too. I use it quite often. It enables you to save files to a cloud, which is not attached to your computer, and you can access files through your iPad or whatever tablet you have through your phone and your computer. I really enjoy the apps that you can use and sync with all your devices so you can always have access to things. Because there are times where I need to send an email with an attachment. I'm nowhere near my computer and it's somebody on a deadline, and so I can pick up my phone, send an email, and attach a document from my Dropbox really easily. And if your computer crashes or something happens, you don't lose all your files. They're all saved on a cloud. So GoTask is another to-do list, kind of organizing your task and things like this. Remind 101 is really great because it's a group texting app. So a teacher or a director of an organization, whoever needs to contact multiple people, somebody who is in charge of a conference and you need to get mass emails or text messages out really quickly, this would be great. So what happens is whoever the leader is, we'll just say it's a professor, signs up for an account and gives it a name, and then the students would take their phones, text a certain number to a certain number. So a code, you just put the code in a text message to a number, and it sets up a profile. So the professor can say, hey, we've moved class today. It's so beautiful. We're going to go have class outside. And so instead of gathering everybody in the class and then going outside, you can all go meet by the gazebo. So it's really fun, and you can really get information out there, and everyone's glued to their phones nowadays too. And so it is a great way to communicate and get information to people fast. Dragon's been around a really long time. It computer-based started off, and it wasn't the cheapest. But now you can get it. I have it on my iPad. I don't know if I have it on my phone, but it's free, a free app. And so it is speech to text, which means you speak and then it types it out for you. So for some people, it is much easier for them to speak instead of type or write. And so this is a great app for them. So I love it.
Those are fantastic apps, Susanna. Thank you. Okay, under the domain of employment, knowing what you want to do, knowing the direction you want to go in, that's going to help you be in compliance with your individual graduation plan anyway. Why not also use it as a goal and activity on your transition plan? So here I've said identify 2 careers of interest within a career pathway. And then another goal is volunteering. Volunteering is a terrific way to get work experience and to build independence. So I love the idea of volunteering as an employment goal. Under the community domain, talking to people, expressing self-confidence, greeting folks, introducing yourself to important people for your future, like agencies at a transition fair, is something that you can write a goal for. Increasing independence on public transportation. I've included this here. Perhaps you live in a place where there's not any public transportation. Well, if your young adult is going to go to college, there's probably going to be a college bus. That's going to be different from the yellow bus that picks them up at one place and goes to the same place every day with no changes. So getting comfortable with riding different kinds of transportation is going to be important. If you live in a place where there's not public transportation, go to somewhere where there is public transportation and have that experience of riding a bus, working with managing fare products, recognizing which stops to get off and which stops not to get off at. Those are going to be super experiences for increasing independence. Adult living post-school options. I love self-advocacy as an option, as a goal to work on, and I really like to encourage young people to make and keep their own appointments. Making appointments with gen ed instructors, doctors, therapists, anybody who parents, mom and dad, you make the appointments for now. Ask them to help your young person make their own appointments. They'll be glad to get on board and assist them through the first couple of times. Give them several chances to do that. When your young adult is on a college campus and needs to see their professor to talk about an assignment, they're going to need to make and keep that appointment. Empower them now by making this a goal in their IEP. And I want to talk just a minute about why you would make an appointment with a professor. Students who are in inclusive post-secondary programs will most likely be auditing classes with their typical peers. The question becomes, what does that look like? What are they required to do? And here's just a word of advice. Students who are in college classes do not endear themselves to the professor if they say, I don't have to do this, do I? I don't have to write this report. I don't have to complete this assignment. I don't have to turn this in on time like everybody else, do I? The professors do not love to hear that. What they do love to hear is this: how close can I come to what you're requiring? How close can I come? I think I can do this. Is this going to be all right? And I strongly consider the students, I strongly encourage you to consider limiting those pull-out services, physical therapy, speech, occupational therapy, that keeps students from being in their typical classes with their typical peers, missing that time. If you have expectations for your young person to go to college, I will tell you that there's not going to be a speech teacher, a PT, an OT, a parapro in college to help them in their classes or pull them out when things are getting a little difficult. I encourage you to, if your therapist has said to you, perhaps we should consider dismissing or reducing the time or changing to a consult model, I strongly encourage you to consider that. So under the related services domain, that's looking at services that would be a support to your young person. Vocational rehabilitation is such a service. They've certainly changed the way they provide their services lately, and that's going to be a truth. All kinds of agencies are going to change the way they do their services. So maybe a goal is to keep up with those changes, mourn them and move on. Keep up with what the changes are and how those agencies can help you under their new iterations. Go ahead and make your contacts with Voc Rehab. Find out what services they could provide and plan to make them a part of your exit plan from college. Under daily living skills, increasing independence in those self-care skills is going to be important for someone who wants to live in a dormitory. Turning on their own shower is going to be necessary. Waking themselves up, using their own alarm to awaken themselves is super, super important. You are not going to live in the dorms with them, so maybe go ahead and let them set their own alarm now. So what does all this have to do with compliance? Well, Indicator 13 talks about looking at appropriate measurable post-secondary goals, looking at if they are updated annually, if they're based on the appropriate assessment, and if there are transition services in the IEP that will enable the student to meet those goals. So writing goals that lead students to inclusive post-secondary programs are appropriate goals to put, and looking at Indicator 13 will show that these goals are there and are written correctly. Here's an example. After graduation from high school, Karla will attend an inclusive post-secondary college program. One of the age-appropriate evaluations that could tell whether a young person is ready for college and how they might need to start getting ready is the College Ready rubric. It will evaluate readiness for inclusive college programs, and it is aligned to the transition plan domains. It is good for looking at college readiness. It is also good for taking along to interviews for college. There's my contact information there if you're interested in a College Ready rubric. So Indicator 14, how does compliance there look at students with intellectual disabilities? Well, if they are enrolled in a higher education program, and an inclusive post-secondary program certainly qualifies as that, then you would get to count them as being in compliance with that indicator. So that would be a way for achieving compliance under indicator 14. So Susanna, upcoming events
These are
in inclusive post-secondary world in Georgia. The KSU Academy is scheduling now a summer leadership intensive. It's a full week of on-campus experiences. If you're interested in registering for a telephone interview, there's my contact information. And Susanna, will you talk about statewide meetings?
Yes, we have statewide meetings about once a quarter. And when this airs, we will have already had our April 29th meeting. But you can always find more information about events and webinars and what's going on with inclusive post-secondary education in Georgia by visiting our website, www.gaipsec.org. And we keep that up to date. So the next meeting will be posted on there, and any upcoming webinars we have. So you should be on the website if you are reviewing this video. So we are happy to let you know about any upcoming events, and you can always email me. All right, and here's one last slide with Karla's email, and thank you again for taking time to listen to this webinar.